does. Well, why do we self-sabotage then?
Why do we self-sabotage? Because we're like worrying about what other people think. Our perception of the world, our perception of self is based on like the world around us. That's why like when people, like little kids, you hear stories of that where like people are born like.
Then why do we care so much?
About other people?
Yeah.
Because we get formed, like our own identity is a reflection of what others have told us. Okay. It's like how you said you felt like you're bad at writing, even though you're not. It's because people told you that. Our self, like at the very core, becomes founded on what other people are telling us.
So that's why it always stems from when you're a kid. The way
I think some stuff can happen as you get older. I don't even know, like, what is the cutoff of, like, a kid?
True.
Like, I got an eating disorder when I was, like, 18 or 19, and it still has an effect on my perception of self, even though I know it's not true, but it still, like, has an impact on how I look at myself.
So you think eating disorders then, well, obviously it's it's an epidemic in this world and sport and everything. So why is it, well, it doesn't help with eating disorders when being in the sport in general.
I think it
makes it worse. People think it fixes it.
I think people don't realize, like, I don't know, most people in this sport, like, have some type of eating disorder. And they just aren't aware. Because all it is like, an obsession with food, like, one way or another. So you take all these people that are planning the 10,000 calorie diet, or 10,000 calorie challenge after their show. That's called the eating disorder. You've now, like, obsessed over food so hard that you planned out a list, like, this long of, like, that's a problem. Unroll it. Yeah.
Santa Claus is coming.
It is. It creates, like, it does. It creates an obsession with, like, the way you look and the way you eat, and that's a problem. And then you, like, combine that with the fact that social media makes everybody compare themselves, and you've then created just such a losing battle where, like, I don't know, it's like certain clients we were talking about where it's like, this is a losing battle. You're never going to step on stage and like how you look because you're so busy like staring at this one body part. It's never going to, you know?
It's never going to change even when it does improve.
Yeah, like you're just going to look at it through like a funhouse mirror, kind of, you know?
Totally.
Don't you notice that? Like when people are looking at themselves, it becomes like a funhouse.
That's all you look at. You look at the same thing over and over and over and think it's going to change, but then it doesn't. Even if it does a little bit.
Yeah, even if it does.
But then they always see it that it's wrong or off or anyway.
Or like a certain guy where you're showing him pictures where he clearly is like so different and you still can't see it.
Yeah.
Because our perception of like ourself is always going to be kind of whatever it is. Like I think in this sport especially, women that are like whoever, women or men, whatever, that come into it with the eating disorder, they're always going to think that they're like, that they're always going to go back to like where they were with like how they saw themselves, like I'm not lean enough. And then you take a lot of people come into the sport where they've been bigger before and they're getting skinnier to do it, and that's where that like fulfillment is. But truthfully, they always see themselves as that like fat person. Haven't you heard people that were bigger like,
yeah,
I just see like that fat person. They can't ever even see themselves for what they like really are.
Yeah.
Whether skinny or fat.
Because they've been heavier their whole life, or maybe they were skinnier at one time and then they got heavier, and then they get skinny again. They still kind of see the fat person.
Or it worries them that they're going to be that, or like even with you, take for example, like you're worried, like you can tell just with your experience, like with how you did gain weight rapidly after, like I can tell just like watching you with clients, like you don't want that to happen to anybody. So it gives you like a certain, with people after their shows, you like have a certain like, almost, it's just like a lot of, you're worried and you can tell like you care a lot about like, people after their shows. You're really worried that they're gonna like lose it and like go to that place where you were, and it like freaks you out. So you make sure to like really take care of them and make sure they have a plan, and like that type of thing, like you go back to that for other people because you've been through it. And like with me, when I watch women and I see certain things or feelings like that I can identify with like eating disorders or being really skinny, I like start to pick up on that, and like I fear it for them, and I start seeing it. I want to like create habits where they're able to like hedge that, you know. Don't like let that start, because you know it's gonna lead to a place that's like not good.
Yeah, because even before competing, I never had an eating problem or
totally.
like a disorder or whatever. It's just it all is eating disorders in a way. But when I got to that place, I was like, how the hell did I get to that place? And
seriously,
being not worried about food at all ever.
I know. Trying
to gain weight for so long, and then I cut and then gained 30 pounds rapidly. That I'm so scared to see people go through that, because I'm like, I felt okay ahead of time. If someone's already in that mode before the show, coming into it, it like heightens it times 10, and then
you didn't even like know it was happening, and then that's actually interesting, because that's kind of, remember when I think even when I first like told you, like I didn't realize when I had that eating disorder, like it wasn't like I ever thought like, oh, you need to be so much skinnier. I just started doing like a certain set of behaviors, and it like led to that. You know what I mean? It like I slipped into it like easier than I thought I was going to.
You didn't realize you did it.
No, and it was, that made it even like harder to see it, because you're in it and you're like, what? No, what are you talking about? Like I'm just doing this thing over here, but as a byproduct, you're like digging yourself into this massive hole of, you know.
Now, isn't there like a certain trigger that puts people into it in a way?
I don't know.
Certain things usually, like you always see like, oh, my parents are hard on me, or my mom wants me to be a certain way.
Yeah, I know that's for me what it was.
It always seems like it's, from what I hear from clients and just other people in general, it always stems from like parents or someone close to them in some way, not necessarily parents, but, or just like, maybe there's something that someone said or did that triggered them. Like, for example, Brooke Erickson said she got triggered when she started becoming anorexic years ago.
Yeah.
Someone said something about her arm or something. Some random guy, and she just like totally went this mode of, okay, I'm getting skinny. I don't want to ever. But there's probably something leading up to it that made her think, okay, that kind of finalized everything. I'm going to go to the extreme.
I'm trying to think with me, like, what that was.
But it's interesting how it all is correlated, where people don't really think about it. Like, you try and be a certain way or a certain look and certain thing, but you don't really realize you're doing it until like someone points it out. Like, oh, okay. Like, a client I talked to a couple weeks ago, like, didn't really realize that it was her family's problem, not hers. Well, her family kind of induced it into her. It's always her choice to make that choice, but they're kind of the influencers.
Yeah, that makes sense. It kind of makes sense with what I was saying too, where it's like yourself, like you're a reflection of like, nobody really and their personality doesn't exist in like a bubble, if that makes sense. Like we all would just have no personality, but like the things throughout life that we get validated for, or like, you know, whatever it might be, like for a lot of people, or maybe for you and I, it's like sports or something. You got a lot of validation from it, so you just start becoming more like that. Or maybe when we're kids, somebody's like, oh, you're funny, or you're really goofy or silly, or you're really smart, or you're really pretty, and then you start, that's what you see yourself as. Whereas if we were in a bubble, you don't have that stuff.
It's true, because you start your life fresh.
Yeah,
just
you
like,
don't know.
Like just like when you showed me the video of the tampon commercial.
Yeah,
the
seriously.
Playtex commercial.
Yeah, like women
Playtex,
are so
like,
much like
run
that.
like a girl, and the kids were just like.
Yeah, they have no idea.
The older girls and guys were just like, kind of like really prissy and good. Yeah, it was. Yeah. And it's funny how it's so influential and judgmental.
I'm so thankful you remembered that commercial. That's such an important
It was a cool commercial.
It is cool. It's a lot like, that's why I think a lot of people really like, with women, that's like an even weirder thing. Guys I know have that stuff too, and I think guys growing up get a lot of the like, don't cry, like you have to be tough, you gotta be this, and women are like, you know, the reverse, but like people liked Wonder Woman for that reason, because like she's something, and that's why people like superheroes, because they're like what this ideal, you know, thing is like of people. If they didn't let all those flaws like you know, and all the way that they perceive themselves hold them back. They become like everything that a person can be when they don't like hold themselves back because of all the things they've been told and all the things they're worried about and all their fears. Like, yeah.
It's really all it is everyone holds themselves back. Nobody else does.
Pretty much, it is.
Unless they're locked down by a ball and chain.
Yeah.
But even then, it's still, they have a way to get out. They just they get such in a big hole that they can't get out of it, to where they just feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But once you get to the point of being comfortable, then you're kind of screwed.
Done. Yeah.
You're screwed.
That's like that self-pity thing, like I was saying.
Yeah, so the self-pity, what do you mean by
like,
that?
If once you start like feeling sorry for yourself, you're like done with. Because you give like validation to all that stuff that other people are saying, or all those thoughts, because everybody has like negative self-thoughts. We just do, because we go around and you hear, there's far more people that criticize in this world, unfortunately, than those that like encourage or bring those traits out of people, where it's like everybody has amazing things about them, but if you haven't been encouraged and all you have around you is, we all have that negative self-talk, and once you start giving weight to it and let it turn into like pity for yourself and how you look at the world every day and how you look at yourself, you're like done with. Self-pity is awful.
So how do you get out of it?
Not giving weight to it, I guess. Like, yeah, waking up and realizing we all have those thoughts and that a lot of them aren't real. And if you let them be valid, then they will be. Because it's pretty much whatever we tell. It's like that cheesy, like, the person who tells himself they can and the person that tells himself they can't are both right.
It's true. Remember I told you a while ago, like, Brendan Bouchard always talk about how at his seminars, talk about negative people and positive people, and he asked the room, it was like 2,000 people, how many people in their life had, 3 people, like, or how many people have had something in their life where it was a negative effect on their, to where they didn't do something or make a change. And the average person had about 7 people in their lifetime that had a negative influence on them to where they didn't do something that they wanted to do, or a dream or whatever it was. And people were like, well, how many here have had hundreds of people? They got up to hundreds. I think it was an average of like 200 people in their life or something like that.
That were like positive?
Positive. Like some kind of positive influence or something. I mean, there were closer ones, obviously.
Yeah.
But he's like, so what's the problem?
I know, it's a weird thing where we can't handle, that's an interesting example, because that's so much like, I've told lots of people that after they compete, it's weird because when people compete, because of that really intense like eye that we're looking at ourselves with, you think about everybody's journey to the stage. How many people say amazing things to you, like amazing, and then people get feedback from the judges, and the judges say, oh, this one thing, this time, or their coach says something super small that may not be like, the most like, or whatever, it's just a criticism, but you should be taking it all in stride. But those are the things people remember. Oh, the judge said this part on me wasn't this way, or I know I've done it myself, like.
It could be even the judge might not have any idea who the hell you were.
Exactly.
And they might just say, well, your glutes, could be a little tighter, and we're like, what?
What are you talking about?
Okay, did you see your hair?
Yeah.
Your earrings were just too flashy, I couldn't see.
I know, but those are it's true. Those are the things that people go back to all the time. They won't go back to like all the positivity and.
No, they won't.
Yeah, they'll just like fully rely on that and that. I don't know. It's weird.
It messes with you, like you said yourself. You went through that recently, where people tell you over and over and over again that
it does. Yeah,
it was one way.
A lot of that, absolutely. A lot of that in my life for sure. Being
so
different.
So different.
You get told that long enough, and like you start to find things that you really like about it, and that becomes you. Those things where everybody keeps telling you you're like a certain way, so in some ways you'll start to like emphasize those things, but at the end of the day, like sometimes you just want to feel like normal. It's weird. We always want what we don't have.
What is normal? You gotta define what that is.
I agree, there is none, but
set that standard of what normal is to you.
I agree, but it's still difficult because there is an average amongst people. You know what I mean? Most people do fall in most categories in like an average. And then there's some that just in each way kind of break that like mold, if you will.
Makes sense.
I think.
And then you break the mold and then you're considered different.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone can be different in different ways. But,
True.
But different doesn't mean it's bad.
True, but don't we as humans, when things get different, that always means different bad.
It's out of your routine and different.
Yeah, it feels like comfort and like consistency and predictability. It's like that's all our brains do is just try to predict what's going to happen, and that's where like being disappointed comes from. Because we think everything is going to be a certain way, and our brain is like a little machine that tries to play everything out in a way that's very like favorable. And so when things deviate from that, that's where like disappointment occurs. It's just an expectation. Yeah, and then it falling short.
So you're saying set your expectations low?
Yeah, hell yeah.
And then and then once you exceed that expectation, then it's like hell yeah.
Yeah, but most of it's just hard. People can't. If you relate it to this sport too, I think people just almost get a little greedy, and it becomes like I'm working so hard, like I deserve this thing, and the reality is like, no, you don't. Everyone is working just as hard.
It's true, because a lot of people come in like, oh, I'm doing my first show, I wanna win.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take the time to do it, which you could win, but if you go with the attitude and you work hard for maybe you get some that like start lifting for the first time for maybe a few months and like I worked hard, I should win, I'm gonna do well. It's like, okay, you just started
for 10 years this hard.
Yeah, you just started, and some people have great genetics, but it really depends on the person. But it's frustrating when you see those that are just like so confident they're gonna win, and then they don't, and their whole world like crumbles.
But it's like that reality check of like, really? I don't know, that to me is like life experience where it's like we really deserve nothing or owed nothing in this life. Like whoever said it was fair? Nobody ever said it was fair.
Nobody did.
Like people will have this concept that like life is fair or something. It's not fair. Nobody cares. Like seriously. Like, sometimes you cut it and sometimes you don't. Like, no one said it was going to be fair.
Sometimes nobody wants to hear someone talk or hear him complain because it's just not fair. But even then, like, even sometimes when people try and voice opinions, it's like nobody cares.
It's true. It is true. And it's not fair, but it's like, think about how many amazing people are in this world and they have a voice that'll, like, never get heard, but...
Yeah.
Nobody said it was fair or that everyone should hear your voice. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's weird.
So with eating disorders, it's kind of a profound thing. I never, like before I started coaching, I never thought it was as bad as it is. I never thought that, like, I think food is more addicting than anything on this planet.
Totally.
Including drugs, but I don't know what that's like, but so I can't tell you if it's...
I think it's probably more abused.
But it's very abused. Absolutely. I didn't know that it was as bad as it was, and it was really crushing to see people go through it.
I bet.
It was really bad. But like when you went through it, what was one thing that really kind of helped you turn the table a little bit of like getting past it?
Just realizing that number one, the reason that I got there in that place was flawed. Like realizing that it was my fault and that that I had to like own what it was. At first, like realizing, oh, this is not right. Like this behavior that you're doing is not right, number one. And then number two, realizing like it's all my own fault and I'm the only one that can help like get me out of it. And then taking the painful steps every day to like move away from that mindset you were in that got you in that place. Because, yeah.
So what was it that you did that was your specific eating disorder, that place? What did that look like?
Oh, I did like a lot of over-exercising. So like what I didn't realize back then is I obviously have an unusual metabolism. So I would still eat, but like I just did a ton of overexercising, masked in the fact that I just wasn't super happy being. I think I was like a little bit depressed. I was away from home for the first time. I tend to be the type that just puts a lot of pressure on myself to succeed. I was the first one to go away to school on a scholarship, wanted to play. And so I put myself in this spot where I just thought, if I just work like really, really hard, I can like do really well in school. I wanted to start on the team, and I thought that would make me happy. Like I left behind a lot of things, people that made me happy, and I didn't want to disappoint anybody, and I didn't want to feel like, I don't know. I left behind a lot of like happiness and moved to a new place where I felt like I could create that by being successful in this thing, and it didn't really do it.
Didn't create any of it. That's like competing.
I played in every game, like I scored as a freshman, I got straight A's. I like couldn't have been more unhappy.
So do you punishing yourself? Like why did it lead to punishing though of yourself, like over-exercising?
I think it was just like thinking, if I can't do this thing, like then what will I have? I don't have any of the like people that made me really happy. Like I always had like a boyfriend, I was really close to my family, had like a couple close friends and things like that. And it was just like, if I can't do this, like what will I have left? It became like a way of, it's like a way of like, this is all I can control. Is this working like until I'm just dead? I would just like study and run on top of like all the soccer practice and all the lifting. I would just like, wouldn't let myself like deviate from this thing. Cause that's what if you deviate from that, like you won't accept less from yourself is like, and I'm a lot like that where it's like, I have a hard time like accepting less than like whatever my best effort is. So once you've built that effort to a point where you're like, you can't keep up with it, like my body couldn't keep up with it. It's
funny how like you say control, well I mentioned, and you said that was a big part of it. That's what it seems like a lot of it has to do with, like they feel like they've probably lost a lot of control in their life.
Everything was like out of control, I felt like.
So they just feel like this one thing is the one thing I can control the most is my food, my eating. So I'm going to do this to myself because it just feels comfortable.
Yeah.
And so they just continue to do it over and over and over again. But yet, since everything else is chaos,
it feels fine.
It feels fine.
You're like latched onto that thing where it gives you, and I'm the type too where like, I've never been interested in like having a lot of friends. So like when I was in a freshman and stuff, like going out to parties was like not it for me. I was never like looking for a lot of friends. I care about like a few very close people, so that brought me like no joy. Like I remember thinking I should like get out there and go, do this stuff, or like, but I just didn't care. It's not where I get fulfillment from just like people. I need like a few close people, and I didn't have that. Like I had like my whole life to count on, and so I just kind of lost it. And
so when you got out of it, you said it took like every day trying to be mindful of stepping in the right direction, one being self-aware, and then also it takes practice every day especially that big of a struggle. It's just each and every day you have to like
wake up and decide.
Yeah.
It's like a choice, like
it really is.
Day.
You make decisions. Everything you do in your life, every single day, every minute of your life is a decision.
It is. People don't realize that. You control your outcomes so much more than you think. While the whole world is like, nothing's fair, it's like the way you approach whatever's coming at you is always your choice. Some people have the crappiest of circumstances, and the way that they approach it is what makes it, what makes it so they're successful, or they become, great, or whatever, by whoever's standards. Like they make something of themselves despite all odds, because you start knowing over time, no matter like what life throws at you, you control it. People act like they're like just getting tossed around by everything, and we're really not. All this stuff is going on, and however you look at it is how you like control it,
So true.
It is.
Oh, I went out this weekend and I just couldn't resist, and I had all of this stuff around me, and I just totally gave in, and
I couldn't stop eating. It wasn't my fault. It was my friends. They brought all this food, and I just bought this bottle of wine. I just couldn't stop drinking. It's just like, it's always...
Listening to people's bad days.
It's always...
We talked about this too.
It's always the same thing, like everything else around them is making it bad for them. But they're like, I know it's my own fault. But all these temptations I give into...
Not really.
But they say that, but I don't think they really realize that they make their own decisions. Nobody's force-feeding you.
No. And it's like when usually people succeed when they just run out of excuses for themselves. You know what I mean? Like when they're just like, oh, once you stop believing all the bullshit that you tell yourself every day is when you start being like successful.
It's true.
It's true.
If you spend more time like trying to be successful and fix or do something better for yourself than you do complaining, if you put all the energy into that instead of complaining, you might as well, you could sit here and argue with someone complaining for an hour. Yeah. Whereas you could have like totally shifted and did something else for that hour that could have been completely different. Absolutely. You would have got it done in whatever, like a workout. Contemplating working out. Well, should I go? I don't know, maybe not. And the whole time you were thinking about it. If you would have just did it during that time, you'd have been done.
Seriously, so true.
It's very true. I've learned that myself, and I only say that because I've done that. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Literally, I'm sitting here, like, oh, I don't know. You know what, screw it, I just need to go.
You do it with videos all the time.
I do.
Not just you. We were like, what should we make a video about? We can be done. And we just like started talking.
Yes. Well,
it's
cool.
True.
Well, I'm glad. Thanks for sharing your stuff. It's very powerful, and also I think you can help a lot of people in this area.